voting. Monsignor Landry, what are the Cardinals up to right now?
Well, they've just started the second session of the day, and so they're primed for the first vote of the second session, in which there are going to be the lottery balls again coming and choosing 3 scrutineers, 3 infirmarians, and 3 revisors. And then they'll proceed with what's the 4th vote. That'll take a little bit longer because, as we've discussed earlier, they've got to pronounce a vow that the one for whom they're voting is the one before the judgment of God, literally and figuratively with Michelangelo, they believe is the one who deserves to be chosen. And then we'll count those ballots, and if someone gets over 89 votes, which is 2/3, then he will be the successor of St. Peter. If he doesn't, they'll proceed immediately to the 5th vote. And this afternoon is consequential because of what's happened in these last couple elections. And I'll let Dr. Matthew Bunson talk about that because I know he's raring to go.
I would love to. Thank you. No, you're absolutely right. So by way of historical context, this was the ballot that elected Joseph Ratzinger, Pope Benedict XVI in 2005. This was also the ballot that elected Albino Luciani, the Patriarch of Venice, on the 4th ballot in 1978. Of course, he went on to survive only for 33 days.
Now, let's say it doesn't happen, this ballot, but within this voting session, there's some history there as well, right?
There is. It was on the 5th ballot that Jorge Mario Bergoglio was elected in 2013 and, of course, became Pope Francis. So this is a very interesting session because this is obviously the last one of the afternoon. Pushing into the next day, it's not unprecedented by any means, but there is some history here.
Now, earlier this morning when we had black smoke, and I know we're going to show it just so everyone can get a sense of what it looked like, there was a little bit of a social media rumor that it was unclear or we weren't sure because there was maybe some gray-looking smoke that came in after. And I just want to make sure that we clarify for our EWTN family, that was black smoke. It was loud and clear, easy to see. Can you tell us what may have caused this weirdness?
Yeah, I suspect it had something to do with a little bit of the timing when the vote was revealed. The black smoke came out. Again, you're absolutely right. It was very, very black smoke. There was no question when it started billowing. But the bells of St. Peter's apparently had started to chime, and so there was that obvious confusion. But I can guarantee that, as we have seen, especially in 2013 and going all the way back to 2005, they're taking immense amount of care to make sure that if it's black or it's white, we'll know it.
I'd have a different explanation as a Harvard-trained scientist, if I might. Don't hold that against me. They're using a canister full of more or less black smoke that's assisting the coloring that's coming up through that chimney. Those of us who remember what was happening in 2005, a lot of the smoke was coming out gray. You couldn't tell easily whether it was black or white. What I think happened is they ran out of that added element, and what was still coming out of that chimney was like what used to be burned back in 2005 and prior. That's my sense. Likewise, they're going to have some white smoke that'll assist the burn so that there's no doubt whatsoever what it is. But if there's a pope elected, those bells will be ringing continuously for all of Rome to come. So absolutely, metaphysically certain that the 2 ballots this morning, no candidate got 2/3.
There's kind of a fascinating level of energy that seems to accompany the white smoke. It's as though something has lifted. And even before the bells, there's a sense, even if you're not sure, there's a sense of it.
Okay, but there is a historical moment where there was confusion, and we were not so sure. When was that?
Well, in 1878, with the election of Pope Leo XIII, there was basically, at the time, they didn't really use white smoke as a specific declaration of the election of the Pope. They would just burn the ballots. And there seemed to be a little bit of confusion within the crowd that was there actually a vote? What was the result? So as a consequence of that, there were a few people in the square here when Gioacchino Pecci came out as Leo XIII. So accidents like this can happen, especially in a very long history of conclaves like we have.
And it's why those bells are so important.
But we also have to remember that the bells here ring every 15 minutes. And on the hour, as it did at noon, you're going to get not only it ringing 12 times, but you're also going to hear it playing, the Angelus, um, which normally goes year round, not just during the time outside of the Easter season. That's totally different than the peal that we get when it's announcing the Pope. It's going to be a really high-pitched, constant, quick bell. And so that was not sounding this morning.
And something very different from the toning of the bells, the pealing of the bells, in that very somber, slow, frankly, somber, depressing tone that they had for Pope Francis's death and funeral.
Oh yeah, you could not miss that.
Right.
It was
so this will
truly
be
striking.
a universe apart from that.
Well, it's exciting, I think, for many people who now, I mean, every time you talk to someone, they're all stopping you and saying, I think it's this afternoon. No, I think it's tomorrow. People who say that are crazy. Everyone has their prediction. They've got their pick. In the young, that's part of the Jubilee of Hope. Is that what you would attribute it to?
I'm not sure it's to entrust ourselves only supernatural hunger is fed are by representatives of God, those who, in a sense, can become signposts pointing us upward. And so the Pope is that figure. What was super interesting in the pontificate of Pope Francis, working for him at the United Nations, is how many people who are not Christian looked to him not just as an ethical authority, but looked to have that sense.
Well, now, Matthew, we've had 3 ballots. And I know that we talked about the significance of this afternoon. Cardinal Parolin was someone that was...
No wisdom, or the assumption is, and I'm guilty of having used the same phrase myself sometimes. I have talked. That isn't always necessarily true. We saw that with Eugenio Pacelli in 1939, who came out as surprise of Karol Wojtyła in 1978 as John Paul II. The question, though, is that if you go in a heavy favorite, and probably the best recent example is Cardinal Angelo Scola, who is considered, at least on paper, going in the heavy favorite. And of course, he didn't come out as huge amount. It still took 4 ballots. Cardinal.
Knowing full well that there could be someone who emerges that we did not cover. We'll cover some of those later today. Should we not get immediate black smoke, white smoke, right? That would be next.
That's right.
What, tomorrow or the day after? But there would still be a chance for it to be Cardinal Parolin, who would be the on-paper favorite going on in. But this afternoon could likewise be a major transition time. It all depends on how close. If after today, if we see black smoke again, I think it would be a sign that it's not going to be Cardinal Parolin, at least narrowly, tomorrow or the day after. But there would still be a chance for it to be Cardinal Parolin, who would be the on-paper favorite going on in. But this afternoon could likewise be a major transition time. It all depends on how close the front runner would be toward the magic number of 89 votes of the 133 for us to be able to determine. We're probably never going to be able to recap happening, but retrospectively is the only way we know what the individual votes meant. And so we'll see whether there's black or white smoke to balcony to announce.
Gambling later, but I do want to mention one thing that people may have missed. So if you take a look behind us, obviously the square is full of pilgrims. It's really loud and exciting and beautiful. Wonderful to see our Lord's Church come together. But that balcony has changed since the last time. I mean, the shots of St. Peter's that we're used to seeing. And Jeff Bruno, our fabulous photographer, who I know you know well from the beautiful pro-life photography that he does in New York, took a great shot of the drapes that have been changed there. And I want to share that with our audience. I'm sorry, our friends on radio who can't see it, but you can definitely see it online when you get home. It really has changed. And we'll go back to that picture in a second. It really has changed. The drapes are different. They're red, bright red, and it's part of these preparations so that when that individual walks out, when that man walks out, he is received with the color that is fitting for the next pope, right?
But it's also able to be dropped so that literally you will come out from behind the curtain. It's a little bit of the presentation of the drama of the surprise. And I think that that's great when you see, for example, in the video of Pope Francis coming on out, that they pull the curtain back and then all of a sudden the successor of St. Peter emerges. We're imminently going to see the same within at least the next few days, I think. And so let's get ready for the curtains to be dropped and then to be pulled back. That'll be something that the eyes of anybody who sees it will never forget.
And if you go back in time, you can find these videos. I know we have a huge library of them too. We have aired them. When you go back and you look at conclave after conclave, there is this beautiful continuity in the presentation of the new Pope. You can see pictures from the election of Pope Pius IX, of Leo the 13th, and all the way in when that procession. Yes, I think it was back in the
late 90s, between 1996 and 1999, more or less.
The Apostolic Palace, for the most part, is also buried in San.
Maybe we could get some pilgrims to thank them for these beautiful, beautiful images and the great way that we're welcomed into our home, the church.
But the facade itself, as you can imagine, there's a lot of salt in the air. When they did the cleaning of this, the renovation of it, the restoration, was that the marble, the stone, was much more multicolored. In fact, the green that you can see in whole parts of it, no one had seen for a very long time. And so the reveal was that the beauty of it, the grandeur of it, but also that it is a fitting entry place, a facade for arguably the greatest church in the whole of Christendom, arguably the greatest religious structure in the world.
Well, Monsignor Landry, this was just a quick update for our EWTN family listening on radio, watching on YouTube, of course, watching on TV, to bring them into this moment. The Cardinals have walked in. They're starting the second voting session. What can we expect in terms of timing?
So they'll have some prayers at the beginning of the session. Doesn't really tell us the book of prayers that they will say, but maybe it's as simple as the sign of the cross. Then they'll elect the scrutineers and the infirmarians and the revisers, and then they'll take the vote. And so the first vote we expect would take about an hour and 45 minutes totally. Second vote would be a little shorter than that, maybe an hour and 10 minutes. And so we would be predicting that if there's white smoke for a new pope, we'd see it about 5:45 p.m. our time here in Rome, 11:45 East Coast time. And that if there's black or white smoke after that fifth vote or the second scrutiny of the afternoon, we'd see that closer to 7 p.m. East Coast. But hey, they may be getting the EWTN.
Right here. Don't go anywhere. We promise that we won't go anywhere either. That was Monsignor Roger Landry, the National Director of the Pontifical Mission Societies USA, and Dr. Matthew Bunson, our Vice President and Editorial Director for EWTN News. I'm Montse Alvarado, your President for EWTN News, here at your service. Happy to have the privilege to serve, and we'll be back very soon at 6:30 p.m. Rome time. God bless you.
Scripture, where even in the